5 different men? That's impossible. The crystal glass slipped from my mother's hand, shattering against the dining room floor. Everyone froze as explicit messages flashed across the TV screen. My girlfriend's phone synced to display her secret life in vivid detail. The 4 men sitting at our family table, my best friend since childhood, her boss, our neighbor, and her gay yoga friend, all stared at each other in horror, realizing they weren't special. They were just numbers in her collection. Blood roared in my ears as I clutched the small velvet box in my pocket. 3 years together, 60-hour work weeks, $20,000 saved. All for this moment, just not the moment I'd planned. How long have you known? Megan whispered, her perfect mask finally cracking as she realized what was happening. Long enough, I replied, voice steady despite my trembling hands. I connected my phone to the TV and pulled up a folder labeled, Our Future. I believe you all should see what I've discovered before I make my announcement tonight. My mother's eyes widened in confusion. My father's jaw clenched. My sister Chelsea quietly positioned herself between Megan and the door. Jason, please, Megan hissed, lunging for the remote. Whatever you think you found, the first screenshot appeared. Her message to my best friend Ryan. Timestamped 3:47 a.m. Poor Jason has no idea. He thinks I'm working late tomorrow. Come over at 8. Ryan's face drained of color. The other men shifted uncomfortably, suddenly understanding why they'd all been invited to this special family dinner. You might want to sit down for this, I told our guests, voice steadier than I felt. It's quite the performance. Everyone thinks they know what betrayal feels like until it happens on an industrial scale. I discovered mine on a Tuesday night, exactly 1 week before tonight's dinner. I've always been the responsible one. Growing up, my younger brother Jake was the wild child, charismatic, unpredictable, the family favorite. I was steady, reliable Jason, the one who got good grades, showed up on time, and never caused trouble. My parents loved both of us, but Jake was the spark in their eyes, while I was the foundation they stood on. That pattern continued into adulthood. Jake drifted between jobs and relationships while I put myself through engineering school, found stable work in construction management, and built a life brick by solid brick. The contrast between us couldn't be more stark. Him, impulsive and carefree. Me, methodical and dependable. When Megan came into my life 3 years ago, I thought I'd finally found someone who valued reliability over flash. She was smart, ambitious, and seemed to appreciate my stability. For once, I wasn't being compared unfavorably to Jake or anyone else. That Tuesday night, I've been working 14-hour days for months. Engineering wasn't just my job. It was my ticket to giving Megan the life she deserved. At least that's what I thought while breaking my back to save for a ring, a wedding, and a down payment on the condo we'd been eyeing. I came home early, covered in concrete dust but carrying takeout from her favorite Thai place. Our apartment was dark. Strange, she'd texted she was staying in, super tired. Her purse was on the counter, but no Megan. Then I heard the shower running. Babe? I brought dinner. I called out, heading toward the bathroom. The water stopped. Hushed whispers followed. Just a minute. Her voice sounded panicky. That's when a text lit up her phone on the coffee table. From Ryan. My best friend since 3rd grade. Did he leave yet? I forgot my watch in your bedroom. I stood there, Thai food growing cold in my hands, as another text appeared. Let me know when it's safe to come back. That was intense. My world collapsed in those 10 seconds. I set the food down, took her phone, and walked out. In my truck, I unlocked her phone with the birthday code I knew by heart and spent the next 3 hours discovering a horror show. It wasn't just Ryan. There was her boss Mark, our neighbor Chris from apartment 502, and Trey, her supposedly gay friend from yoga. For men, hundreds of messages. Photos I'll never unsee. Plans made while I was working overtime. Jokes at my expense. Poor Jason has no idea, lol. He's so boring in bed, not like you, working late again. More time for us, growing up. I'd always covered for Jake's mistakes. When he crashed Dad's car, I said I'd been driving. When he failed classes, I tutored him all night. When he needed money, I'd give him my savings. It was my role, the responsible brother who fixed everything. Even now, I send him cash when he's between jobs, which is more often than not. That night, driving around the city, physically sick from what I'd discovered, I realized I'd been playing the same role with Megan. Working myself to exhaustion so she could have nice things. Making excuses when she treated me poorly. Always understanding, always forgiving, always reliable old Jason. I parked outside our building at dawn and watched Ryan leave our apartment, adjusting his collar, grinning like he'd won something. My so-called best friend since elementary school. We'd shared everything: baseball cards, school lunches, first beers, college road trips. I was best man at his wedding, godfather to his kid. And this was how he repaid me. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I acted completely normal. Kissed Megan goodbye, told her I loved her. Went to work. Started making calls. Mom, I'm ready to propose to Megan, I told my mother, who squealed with delight. I want to do it at a family dinner next week. Can you host? I'm thinking we'll call it an anniversary celebration for you and Dad. Our anniversary isn't for 3 months, she said, confused. Exactly. She'll never suspect I'm planning to propose. It's the perfect cover. Mom bought it immediately. Oh, that's brilliant. Of course we'll host. Who should we invite? Everyone, I said. Family, close friends. And I need you to specifically invite Ryan. Tell Megan you're doing it as a surprise for me, since he's my oldest friend. Also, could you call Megan and insist she brings her friend Trey? You know, the gay one she's always with. Say you want to meet all her friends. What about her work colleagues? Should we invite any of them? Actually, yes. Tell Megan to invite her boss Mark. Say Dad's interested in some networking. And when you send out invitations, put our apartment building address so our neighbor Chris gets one too. My sister Chelsea called me an hour later. Mom's planning some fake anniversary dinner that's actually your proposal? This sounds complicated. Something like that. I replied. Hey, you still have that extra room? I might need a place to crash soon. There was a pause. What's going on, Jason? I'll explain everything next week. Just bring your camera to dinner. Trust me. Over the next 5 days, I gathered evidence. Recorded Megan's phone conversations when she thought I was in the shower. Took screenshots of everything. Found receipts for hotel rooms charged to our joint account, listed as girls' nights. Discovered the condo deposit I'd been saving for had been drained to fund a weekend trip with Mark, her boss. I called the wedding venue I'd been eyeing, a beautiful lake house where I'd planned to propose, and canceled the tentative reservation. So much for that dream. The final piece came when I accidentally spilled coffee on my laptop and asked to borrow Megan's. In her email, I found messages to all 4 men, coordinating their schedules around mine. Jason's working late Thursday. Come over at 8. He's visiting his parents this weekend. Free house. In one particularly vicious exchange with my supposed best friend, she wrote, he's about to propose, I can tell. Poor idiot's been working himself to death for a ring. Should I say yes for the gifts or just end it? Ryan's response, milk it for the wedding presents, then we'll figure something out. By Tuesday, I had everything I needed. I made sure they'd all attend using different strategies. For Ryan, my mom called him directly. We're having a special dinner Thursday. Jason would love to have you there. It's a surprise, so don't tell him I called. For Mark, I casually mentioned to Megan at breakfast, my dad really wants to meet your boss. Says he might have some contacts in construction management. Would you mind inviting him to my parents' dinner? It would mean a lot. For neighbor Chris, I had my mom send a formal invitation to our building, and I made sure to mention it to him in the elevator. Hope you can make it Thursday. My parents are excited to meet our neighbors. And for Trey, I had my mom call Megan directly. I'm finally making my special lasagna Thursday. Please bring that nice yoga friend of yours. What's his name? Trey? Jason says he's hilarious. Megan looked confused by all these separate invitations, but seemed pleased by the attention. Your family's really going all out for this anniversary dinner, she said. I just smiled. They've been wanting to meet my whole world. The best part? None of her lovers knew about each other's relationships with her, and none of them knew they were all being invited to the same dinner. That was the beautiful part. My mom outdid herself with dinner. Prime rib, her famous garlic mashed potatoes, asparagus with hollandaise, crystal glasses, silver candlesticks, the good china. The ring box felt like a stone in my pocket. 3 months' salary for a diamond that would never be worn. I watched them all arrive. Megan, radiant in a blue dress, hugging my mother. Ryan, bringing wine, clapping my shoulder with the same hand that had touched my girlfriend. Mark looking uncomfortable but professional. Chris from apartment 502 making small talk. Trey complimenting the decor while eyeing me nervously. None of them would make eye contact with each other. Perfect. The lakeside venue I'd originally chosen would have been breathtaking. Megan had mentioned loving the spot when we drove past it once. Tables overlooking the water, string lights in the trees. But my parents' suburban dining room would serve my new purpose better. Dinner conversation was strained. My father asked Trey about his special friend, causing Megan to nearly choke on her wine. Ryan kept checking his phone under the table. Mark talked exclusively to my mother, while Chris barely spoke at all. When they seated me next to my aunt instead of beside Megan, I noticed her smug little smile. She'd orchestrated the seating chart, putting herself between Ryan and Trey like it was some kind of joke. I was relegated to the far end, practically next to the kitchen. "So how do you all know each other?" my sister Chelsea asked, looking directly at Ryan and Trey. Megan jumped in. "Oh, they don't really. Different parts of my life." I smiled and reached for Megan's hand. "Actually, they have more in common than you'd think." That's when her phone, face up on the table, lit up with a text from Rich 255, a fifth man I hadn't even known about. "Miss you, baby. When can you ditch the boyfriend again?" The table went silent. Megan reached for her phone, but I was faster. "Let me get that for you," I said, picking it up. "Rich 255? Don't think I know him." Her face paled. "It's just spam. Give me my phone, Jason." Instead, I stood up and walked to the TV mounted on the dining room wall. "Actually, before dessert, I have something special planned." My mother beamed, thinking this was the proposal. My father looked confused. Chelsea readied her camera. "I've been saving up for something important," I continued, connecting the phone to the TV. "Working double shifts, overtime, weekends. Because I thought what we had was worth investing in." The screen flickered to life, showing the photo gallery on Megan's phone. "Jason, stop," she hissed, trying to get up, but my sister, God bless her, placed a firm hand on Megan's shoulder. "I thought we were building a future," I said, scrolling through the first set of screenshots, her conversations with Ryan. "But it turns out I was just funding a very active social life." Ryan's face drained of color as his messages appeared 10 feet tall on the screen. My parents gasped. Mark and Chris stared daggers at Ryan, realizing they weren't exclusive. "You fucking told him?" Ryan snarled at Megan. "I didn't," she protested, looking trapped. "No, she didn't tell me anything," I replied calmly, moving to the next set, her exchanges with Mark. "I found out on my own. The funny thing is, none of you knew about each other." Mark stood up. "This is inappropriate. I'm leaving." "Sit down, Mark," I said, my voice hard. "Unless you want these sent to HR at your company. Sexual relationships with subordinates, that's still against policy, right?" He sank back into his chair, ashen-faced. Chris and Trey were next. With each revelation, the men looked increasingly horrified, not just at being exposed, but at discovering they were parts of a collection. Not special, not exclusive, just interchangeable bodies keeping her entertained while I worked. Finally, I showed the email where she and Ryan discussed my impending proposal. My mother was crying now. "Jason, please." "Almost done, Mom," I said, reaching into my pocket. I pulled out the ring box and placed it on the table. I was going to propose tonight. Had a whole speech prepared about love and trust and building a life together. Megan's mascara was streaking down her face. "Jason, we can fix this." I made a mistake for mistakes, actually, that I know of. I turned to her unwilling audience. Or should I say 5, counting Rich 255? I pulled out my phone and opened the social media app. I've documented everything: times, dates, conversations. I was thinking of posting it all, but then I realized something. I don't need the world to know what kind of people you are. Just the people in this room. My aunt gasped. My cousin looked like she was recording everything on her phone. This would definitely make the family group chat later. Megan's mask finally cracked. "You're such a fool," she laughed, champagne glass dangling from her fingers. "So boring, so predictable. Working yourself to death at that construction site, coming home too tired to even touch me. What did you expect?" That's when I pulled out my second surprise. Paperwork from the bank. I slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Transfer confirmations. I've moved my money out of our joint accounts. Changed the locks on my truck and storage unit. Paid next month's rent on the apartment. Consider it a parting gift while you figure out which of these gentlemen wants to take my place." I turned to the 4 men, who looked like they wanted to melt into the floor. "Although based on your faces right now, I'm guessing there aren't any volunteers?" Ryan found his voice first. "Dude, it wasn't personal. Save it." I cut him off. 18 years of friendship, and you couldn't keep your hands off my girlfriend. Tell me what part wasn't personal? Megan tried creating a group chat right there at the table, frantically texting all her lovers to get your story straight. She didn't realize the screen was still mirroring to the TV, displaying her desperate attempts to salvage the situation. I turned to my parents. Sorry about dinner. The prime rib was excellent. To my sister, I'll take you up on that spare room now. Finally, to Megan, I've boxed your things from my closet and drawers. The rest, figure it out by the first of the month. As I headed for the door, Megan called after me, voice suddenly small. Where are you going? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Away from you. All of you. My sister followed me out, leaving behind a dining room frozen in shame and shock. In the driveway, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You okay? She whispered. I wasn't. Not remotely. But I'd survived the hardest part. I will be, I said, looking back at the house where 5 people who had betrayed me were still sitting around my mother's table. Eventually, Chelsea and I drove in silence to her apartment. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a beer when we got inside and sat with me on her balcony. You know what the worst part is? I finally said. I kept thinking I was the problem. Working too much, not being attentive enough. That's what manipulators do, she replied. They make you think their betrayal is your fault. My phone exploded with notifications. Megan, Ryan, even Mark and the others, all suddenly desperate to explain. I turned it off. The next morning, my mom called. Your father and I are so sorry, Jason. We had no idea. Not your fault, Mom. Ryan's wife saw the photos, she continued. Chelsea sent her everything. She's left him and taken their son to her mother's. I hadn't expected that consequence, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for him. Actions have consequences. It's been 2 months since the dinner. I stayed at Chelsea's for 3 weeks before finding my own place. After the initial shock wore off, I realized how isolated I'd become in my relationship with Megan. I drifted away from old friends, stopped going to my brother Jake's band performances, missed family gatherings because I was always working. Speaking of Jake, he surprised me. When he heard what happened, he drove 6 hours to see me. We hadn't been close in years, but he showed up with beer and pizza. You've always been there for me, he said awkwardly. Figured it was my turn to step up. We talked until sunrise. For the first time, I saw that my responsible nature wasn't just a burden. It was a strength that had carried me through this crisis. A week after moving into my new apartment, I received a handwritten letter from Megan. Pages of apologies, explanations, pleas for another chance. I read it once, then filed it away without responding. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Yesterday, Chelsea invited me to her birthday party. I hesitated. Socializing still feels exhausting, but agreed to go. To my surprise, Jake brought his new girlfriend, a pediatric nurse named Allison. She was warm, genuine, and looked at my brother like he hung the moon. How are you really doing? She asked me quietly during dinner. Better, I said, realizing it was true. Building a new normal. Jake told me what happened. For what it's worth, anyone who can't see your worth isn't worth your time. After dinner, Jake pulled me aside. Hey, so, I've been thinking about what you did for me in college. Taking the blame for that party. You could have been expelled, but you covered for me. I'd almost forgotten. Jake had thrown a rager in our shared apartment that got out of hand. When campus security showed up, I claimed responsibility since my record was clean while Jake was already on probation. Ancient history, I said. Not to me, he replied. I've never properly thanked you. For that, and for all the times you've bailed me out. I'm sorry I haven't been a better brother. His words meant more than he knew. The next day, my cousin Emma called. You won't believe this. Megan's trying to join our family book club. Your Aunt Barbara told her off in front of everyone at the grocery store. Family closing ranks around me. It felt good. Strange, but good. Then came the biggest surprise. My boss called me into his office last week. There's a project management position opening in our Denver office, he said. Higher salary, better benefits. I recommended you. Denver. Mountains. Fresh air. Distance from the memories and humiliation. When would I start? I asked. Next month. Think about it. I didn't need to think. I'll take it. This morning, I logged into the joint account Megan and I shared. She'd emptied it completely, the pettiest of parting shots. But she didn't know about my personal savings account, the one I'd started 6 months ago for our honeymoon. There's enough there for a fresh start in Denver. The ring sits on my dresser. I'll return it tomorrow, take the loss on the resale value. Small price to pay for freedom. I don't know what the 4 or 5 of them are doing now. Don't care to know. What matters is what I do next. Chelsea's throwing me a small going away gathering next weekend. Nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends. Jake promised to bring his band to play. Mom's making her famous lasagna. My brother texted me last night, "Proud of you, man. For standing up for yourself and for moving forward. Denver's not going to know what hit it." Coming from Jake, the family rebel, those words felt like a torch being passed. For once, I was the one taking the leap while he cheered from the sidelines. I pick up my phone, looking at the Denver apartment I've leased sight unseen. It's smaller than what I shared with Megan, but it's mine. All mine. My thumb hovers over the contact for that pediatric nurse, Allison's friend she insisted I should meet when I arrive in Denver. 3 years wasted on a lie. Not one more day. I hit call, and for the first time since that night with the Thai food growing cold in my hands, I feel something close to hope. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.